Good morning, YouTube, and everyone else. My name is Alex, and welcome to my very first podcast. I'm absolutely terrified to be doing this, but this is something I've been wanting to do for a long time. And so this is the first episode, and this is me just explaining who I am, why I'm doing this, and, my own regrets and things like that. So, first of all, welcome to my podcast. The official title is This is the No Regrets Podcast. And I want to take you, as my audience, on a journey of a series of interviews of people who are trying to live intentionally to minimize regrets in their own life. These aren't necessarily people who have succeeded in doing so, but it's people who are making an effort who I feel have some value to share with others. And so that's what this is. And I came up with the idea back in the spring. So it is now November 2022. And back in the spring, I was thinking of a way that I could reach people. I've always had a desire for impact more than anything. How can I help people? How can I inspire people to live their best lives? And so one night I was thinking, brainstorming, and this came to my mind, and I couldn't get it out. I had no desire to do a podcast before that. And since the spring, this is all I can think about. And so that's how I came up with the idea. And the reason why it took so long to get started is because a lot of things happened this year. 2022 was the hardest year of my life by far. It's not even close. And it started off with my dad getting diagnosed with terminal cancer back at the end of April. And then in June and this summer, my business that I was running with my ex-business partner not surviving. We had a business that was flipping houses and wholesaling houses, and we made some business errors. And then on top of that, the market turned and everything compounded, and my business did not survive. And so in the process of the business declaring bankruptcy and me personally losing everything, it was the worst summer of my life. Like, personally, I've lost absolutely everything. And I'm very thankful that my in-laws actually gave us a place to live temporarily. So that's where we are right now. And that's why it was delayed. It was a hard year of anxiety, depression, figuring out if I can salvage my business. And when I couldn't, what the heck do we do? And so it was quite the year. And so, considering this is a no regrets podcast, one of my regrets is that it took so long to get started. But now I'm actually in the right mindset to do this. I'm excited to push forward with this and actually commit to this. I would say June and July were the worst months for me, with depression, anxiety, life being turned upside down for me personally, my business partner walking away and being malicious towards me, and me losing everything, including my reputation, my business, being not only humbled, but humiliated in the process. And all the while taking extreme ownership because it's my business and everything that happened is my responsibility. And so for me to actually live without regrets, I must take extreme ownership. And from that, I owe a lot of investors a lot of money. And this is such a heavy burden because it's actually more money than most people will make in a lifetime. And right now, I don't see a way of making it happen. And so, in light of that, to live without regrets, I'm going to do my very best to make people whole. And so I'm taking extreme ownership with that and pushing forward and not dwelling in the past. I spent the summer punishing myself, looking at every single thing I could have done different and I should have done different. And would we have survived anyways? And all these other things. And so that's kind of why it took so long for me to get started. And so, the last couple of weeks I've been planning this, what software am I going to use? Who am I going to interview? And just the anxiety of starting this, putting myself out there, being vulnerable. You know, I'm doing this because I feel I have to. I feel like God has pressed this on me to start this podcast, to talk about my own regrets and the regrets of others as learning lessons, and to inspire people who are going through their own hard times and their own list and life of regrets to actually get through it and live intentionally into their full purpose and potential. So that's kind of what that's about. And I've just got some random notes here. And so I want to provide real experiences of real people who are also willing to be vulnerable and share their success stories and their failure stories, and about living without regrets. And what would they change? How do you move on? And provide education on that. And I'm excited that I can provide this platform where I don't think enough people are talking about this. Um, you know, I think a lot of people get stuck in the ruts of life and they don't really know what to do about it. And there's not a whole lot of places you can go to where people are actually talking about this. So I'm really excited to do this. And this topic means a lot to me. And I want to inspire as many people as possible through this, through my own mistakes, etc. And so, why am I doing this? I feel like God has put this on me. And so I feel like I can't not do it. And I'm not doing this because I'm an expert in any way. I'm not an expert. If anything, I feel like a failure in that if anyone is not equipped to talk about this, it's me, because I feel like I have more regrets than most in my life. And so another part of this is accountability. In doing so, I want to walk the walk and talk the talk and absolutely move forward and live my life with as little regrets as possible, living intentionally, making the most of every opportunity, and living to my full purpose and potential that God is giving me. And so that's why I'm doing it. So a couple things about myself. Talk about regrets. A couple big regrets that I have are, I did not live to this point. I have not lived up to my full potential in life. I did not maximize what I was capable of, as a teenager and in my 20s. I didn't take life very seriously. And life was very hard for me. I had a very challenging childhood, but I did not push myself. I did not push myself in school. I did not push myself in my opportunities. And, not a lot was accomplished in my teenage years and in my 20s. I kind of got stuck, in the rut of life, and was really confused with what I should be doing with my time. I didn't have any goals, which I think is a massive mistake. And because I didn't have goals, I didn't have direction. I didn't know what I wanted. I just knew I wasn't happy. And so, I spent my 20s. I got married in my 20s. I wasn't the best husband. I was frustrated at the lack of things happening in my 20s, the lack of any success and fulfillment. And I was miserable and frustrated, and I really didn't take advantage or push myself. And because of that, I wasted a lot of time. And so those are a couple of big regrets of my 20s and into my 30s. I'm 38 now. And, it was a couple years ago that I started a business. I've been wanting to start a business for forever. I started a business and then it fails a couple years after I start it. And, life has just been very, very frustrating. And so what I want to do is I want to make the absolute most of the rest of my life, however much time God has for me, And I really want to push this message of what it looks like to live going forward with fewer and fewer regrets and to live intentionally. And so a couple regrets from this year are, of course, my business, my house flipping business and wholesaling business did fail. And we owe investors a lot of money. And we went through a very stressful, hard time. And we're still going through that. And then in the process of losing everything. And then, but on the flip side, I also know that character is built in the hard times. And I'm a different person today than I was at the beginning of this year. And I know if this year was filled with victories, success, and very little challenges, I would not be who I am today. And I probably wouldn't be doing this podcast, maybe. And so I regret it, but I know that it has to be that way. And I know that getting through this, as I rebuild my life, as I rebuild myself and repay investors, I'm a much better person through it. And so that I can be grateful for. I just regret the fact that it had to be this way. And then another regret is that it took me so long to start this podcast. That November 2022, I started this podcast, and I wasn't thinking this way years ago. And so I've wasted a lot of time, and I wasted a lot of time this year, and it is what it is. But that is a regret that I have for this year. Another one is that I'm not in the physical shape I want to be. Through the pressure and the stress, I've been gaining weight, and I haven't been exercising. And now I'm in the right mind space to get back into it. I want to be in the best shape of my life going forward. I want to be proud of who I am as a person with my character and my physical body. I want to be healthy. I want to be around for my kids. I want to be not only an inspiration through my experiences and the stories I share, but also in the discipline of my physical body. And so those are some of the regrets from this year. And why I think this topic matters is because a lot of people have a lot of regrets. I feel like a lot of people can benefit from a podcast like this. And a lot of people don't know how to get out of the ruts of life. They don't know how to change and go make better decisions even, or even understand that that's a thing, to live a better life without regrets. And so I feel this is very important for that. And I've got a few other things that I want to discuss. I've just got notes on my phone. So I want to be living without regrets. And what that means for me is doing things that put me out of my comfort zone, like this. I've never done this before. I know this is my first time, and this is going to suck, and I will get better. But I know this is what I have to do to live without regrets. I have to do this podcast. I have to exercise. I want to be the best father and husband possible. So that requires me to work on those relationships. And so that's what living without regrets looks like for me. That's what I want to be doing. And I want to be inspiring as many people as possible to learn from my experiences to grow themselves. I know God has been calling me to do big things for years. And for many reasons, I haven't been doing it. And I'm tired of that. And I want to be taking full advantage now. I do not want to waste another minute. And I want to be living the best life I can for God, so that when I stand before God, He doesn't look back and show me the life that was intended for me that I did not live. I want to be living for my maximal potential, maximum impact, because that's where fulfillment is. And I want to live a fulfilled life. I've spent my 20s and most of my 30s living very unfulfilled life. And it's been full of challenges, some self-induced, and I can make better decisions, and I want to make better decisions. and I want to impact the world through my life, through this podcast, and through interviewing people that can really inspire this audience. And so that's really how to move forward from regrets. And I think people do want to live intentionally. I do think people want to live without regrets. I just think a lot of people don't know how, and a lot of people are lazy. I know I'm lazy, and I know I can be a difficult person to live with. And I think people don't want to push past the laziness, or push themselves to be uncomfortable or try something new, or they don't think it's worth it. And so I think a lot of people do want to live without regrets and they don't know how, but I also think a lot of people just don't care. And I would love to see that change. I would love to see people live their best life possible. And I believe that the pain of discipline versus the pain of regret is a very important thing to talk about. Being here on this podcast, pushing myself to be better, versus looking back and saying I'll start tomorrow and wishing I did it in the past, right? I don't want to look back and have those regrets. I would rather deal with the discipline today instead of looking back and having those regrets. And I believe God plays a big role in this for me. I'm a Christian. I believe in God, and I believe God has a big purpose for me. And I do not want to waste that. That's actually terrifying, to waste a God-given opportunity, which is your life, my life. And I've wasted too much of it, and I don't want to do that any longer. And so, a life without regrets to me looks very different than my past. To live a life without regrets is very difficult. It requires you to do the things that are hard. It requires you to set goals. It requires you to execute on those goals. It requires you to look in the mirror and take a self-assessment of who you are, where you are in your life, and take extreme ownership. I'm not happy with where I am in my life. And I know a lot of people, if they actually look in the mirror, they're not happy with where they are either. And the first step to living without regrets is taking extreme ownership and accountability in your own life. You are the way you are because of you. My business, as an example, failed, and it's because of me. There's other circumstances outside of that didn't help. But at the end of the day, it was my business. I chose my business partner. We chose our projects. We did all that. And I am taking extreme ownership. I have to do that if I'm going to move forward and live without regrets in the future. And so I believe for me to be successful, and I don't just mean money, I mean fulfilled. I mean living to my potential as success. For me to be successful, it's absolutely critical that I live without regrets, because my regrets in my past have kept me distracted. Whether it's not setting goals or addictions or whatever it may be, it's extremely distracting. And it causes you to lose your focus and lose your way. And so I want to be extremely focused and extremely intentional, because I want to be as successful as possible. And so if you want to have the most impact and be as successful as possible, you need to be living without regrets. You need to be improving yourself. You need to be doing those hard things in your life to push you forward and move the needle in your own life, to not only become a better person, but to have a bigger impact and to be more successful, even financially. And so living without regrets is critical to my future success. And I believe that to be true for absolutely everybody. And honestly, for a person to live without regrets going forward, they also need to be able to forgive themselves and forgive others. I know I've punished myself over and over again for mistakes I made. And to come to a point where you can actually forgive yourself and forgive others, it's absolutely crucial for you to move forward in living without regrets. Not getting stuck in the past, but looking forward. You know, looking back for lessons that you can learn. Because the other extreme is that you're the victim mentality, which if you want to live the best life possible, you cannot have the victim mentality. You need to take extreme ownership. That is the absolute starting point. And if you need help, it's okay to get help. To overcome those things, like to have the proper mindset for this. And so, those are a couple of things I would say for those who want to move past their regrets. You need to own it. You need to forgive yourself. If there's broken relationships, do your very best to mend those relationships and look forward, set goals, take extreme ownership, and take small steps in the direction you want to be going. If you have someone you aspire to be like, what can I do this afternoon to move the needle to be more like that? And honestly, my hero, I want it to be myself a year from now or 2 years from now. And the worst thing would be if in 2 years I look back and I'm no different than I was today. That would be the absolute worst thing ever. And then how I want to be remembered. I'm going through questions that I'm going to be asking guests just for talking points. How I want to be remembered is someone who lived to their maximum potential for God, who was able to impact millions of people. And so that's really what I want to be remembered for. I want to have a legacy of impact. I want to help as many people as I can, inspire people to live very intentionally. And so that's why I'm here. This is what I'm going to do. I'm committed to this. I want to interview as many people as possible who I think can add extreme value. And I want to share this out to as many people as I can. And in doing so, I'm happy to be as vulnerable as possible because I know that's where it's helpful. That's where it's helpful in helping people. That's what I want to do. So that's basically all I have to say. Thank you for joining me on my first podcast. I feel like I did a brutal job, but it will improve. I hope it wasn't boring, and I hope it was insightful. Thank you very much.